Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we have some interesting news today. So it seems that there is new NAGA of KHURESH lore. Yesterday we found out from Lore Master Sotek as we were discussing the new Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay supplement for the Imperial Zoo that a rather unknown model, it was there from the Monstrous Arcanum but just had no real use, has now been moved to KHURESH. This is from a very recent publication, so this is, for all intents and purposes, new lore for the NAGA of KHURESH. So let's talk about it. First we'll talk about the model itself. So this is the Dread Maw, which was originally released alongside the Warhammer Fantasy supplement for 8th edition, the Monstrous Arcanum. If you haven't seen this a lot, it's because it was a Forge World miniature and, well, people weren't going to spend a lot of money on a monster that they only could use with very specific types of battles. Sorry, it's just true. However, the monster itself looks absolutely epic, doesn't it? It's a giant serpent and, well, it had a lot of very strange lore when it was introduced, as most Forge World introductions just had a little tidbit, sometimes even less so, and it was just there just for rule of cool factor, and, well, let's be honest, it does look very, very cool. Now, its original lore, which can be found on screen right now, puts it as a creature of chaos. In fact, they are found in the Northern Chaos Wastes, or any of the Chaos Wastelands. It depends on what paragraph you're looking at. So when people originally got their hands on this book, including myself, it's like, oh cool, another Chaos monster, and I even linked it to various possible Chaos DLCs in the future through speculation, but now it looks like this has changed. With a large portion of its description being rewritten, most of it is actually very much the same as the Monstrous Arcanum, but being rewritten to make it more of a questionable creature. So let's take the time now and read that over, because there's some really cool things to talk about, especially the KHURESH stuff. So first let's discuss its description and then we'll move on to the KHURESH stuff. Of all the subtle killers of our hazardous world, none are quite so promiscuous as greed. The endless quest for profit leads to many reckless choices, but there will always be those quick to tell you that with great risk comes great reward. If this is so, then the rewards to be found along the Ivory Road to Distant Cafe must be beggar imagination, for it is regularly stalked by the terror of merchants. The Dread Maw is a terrible predator born of the Blighted Wastes. See, it mentions Chaos Waste once again. Keep in mind that these books are normally written in the perspective of a possible writer in the Warhammer Fantasy world, so let's continue. One does not see a burrowing Dread Maw coming for them. They feel it as a rumble in the earth, signaling doom. East of Ostermark, within the World's Edge Mountain, rises the legendary Karak Kadrin, roughly stronghold of the pass in Reichspiel. Karak Kadrin was so named for it guards the Peak Pass, one of the most important trade routes of the Old World and one of the deadliest. The famed Ivory Road travels over Peak Pass, through the blasted wastes of the Darklands, into the distant mountains of Morn where the ogres rule supreme, and onto near Mythic Cafe. The Ivory Road boasts no end of dangers, but few are as deadly or as unbribable as the Dread Maw. Karak Kadrin is widely known as Slayer Keep, for it is the center of the worship of Grimnir, the dwarf god of battle, and houses a great number of those fell dwarf warriors known as Slayers. Our expedition stayed in Karak Kadrin for several weeks. Over tankards of ale on many nights we were told tales of Dread Maws and numerous other monsters by steely-eyed dwarfs with brilliant orange hair crests. These dwarves in particular took a keen interest in our work. Dread Maws are huge serpents. Some dwarfs swore worms is more appropriate. Their vast circular mouths filled with hooked crescent-shaped, inward-curling teeth. Their scaly grey and greenish bodies are coated with a rank slime that aids in passing through the earth at great speed, as well as befouling the axes of those that seek to end them. Dread Maws frequently attack from directly beneath their targets, erupting from the earth to swallow smaller foes whole. They are just as willing to attack larger creatures, boring through flesh and bone to consume them from the inside. On those awful details, at least the stories agreed. After that, we were cautioned that Dread Maws are creatures of the Chaos Waste, and no two are truly the same. Their skins seem prone to rot and decay, such that they may bear open suppurating wounds. The majority of Dread Maws bear strange mutations. Some allegedly spew at their foes the same foul and corrosive substance that coats their skin. Others are said to have acidic blood that can melt flesh. A rare few grow to titanic size and are capable of swallowing whole armored wagons in a single gulp. Every story agreed on the wisdom of avoiding Dread Maws as much as possible unless one were seeking a glorious death. One night I asked how such a creature could ever be defeated. The warriors present all agreed that enough damage could drive a Dread Maw away. A few had seen particularly well-funded caravans use cannons to kill the monsters. A harsh laugh rang out, and the entire crowded tavern fell silent to look at a heavy scarred slayer bearing the largest axe I have ever seen. He set down his tankard and declared, "I'll allow that cannon would do it. But the best way to kill a Maw is to let it swallow you and then cut your way out from the inside." It's worth noting that the dwarf's skin was covered in what appeared to be extensive burns. When I asked after him, I learned he was Belagol Ironskin, a famed slayer who failed many times to die, that is, and yes, he was quite serious. Quite the badass dwarf in all honesty, and what we can see in this lore is it still goes with a bit of the traditional sense, but it doesn't really outright confirm that this is a chaotic creature of nature. Instead, it just kinda gives a small maybe in a sense, and then this is further expanded upon with the small footnote on the side of the page, so let's read that. There are those within my order that believe that the Dread Maw originally comes from the distant hinterlands of Khuresh. Nightmarish tales involving the fabled Blood Naga queens say that the Dread Maw were created, not born, created to prevent easy travel from the west. Such tales could easily be dismissed as irrelevant heresy if not for the fact that a cult dedicated to those distant horrors was uncovered in Sylvania just a few years ago. One that had been attempting to enact a terrible blood ritual that would summon a Dread Maw even onto the Empire. So this is really curious because this kinda links it up to Khuresh, and it looks like they're just trying to give little hints in a sense of what Khuresh could be. Well, it makes sense for a giant serpent-like creature to be something from Khuresh, and let's be honest, at this point nothing was really confirmed as to what the Dread Maw actually was. It was just pretty much assumed. And since we know that Warhammer 3 has the Khuresh territories just unplayable at the very moment, it could be that this could be the first proper hint towards that. I thought it would be the whole Naga thing with 2 Gs. This only references it with 1. I'm not sure what that could be. It could be either a spelling mistake or the fact that this book was indeed planned for release much earlier, where maybe that would not have been a plan or something. Keep in mind that, release schedules for anything Warhammer related, even for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, has been a bit, well, off because, the world had to stop for like 2 years. But a snake with a snake men faction kind of makes sense. Again, very strange because now it says that these things were created. There's no real information or background regarding that because that was never even in the original lore when it came to 8th edition. I don't know, given the fact that Cafe was so well received, maybe they do have plans for new factions like Ind and Khuresh. I still think so. We're gonna have to wait and see, obviously. But now let's talk about the creature itself, at least how it used to work in 8th edition. So on the tabletop, this was an interesting creature as obviously it's there for melee, but it had kind of low weapon strength. Now, what it did was make it very unique. This was probably one of the most unique monsters ever introduced in Warhammer Fantasy. It was able to be upgraded as it costed 280 points. That was very expensive for a monster, but you could even give it the Devastating Charge special rule, you could give it Armor Piercing special rule, you could even give it a Breath Weapon, which had a Flame template. We're already used to that in Total War Warhammer. And finally, anything that you would hit it with, you would get wounds back, as this had the Poisonous Blood special rule if you upgraded it. The creature itself was heavily armored with scaly skin, it had random movement, so it could move quite well, and the thing is that if it did damage, especially to monsters, it would do the multiple wounds attack, so it was pretty good at taking out other monsters if you could get the hit in. But what made this really unique was the fact that it had the Tunneler special rule. I don't think we've seen this in many other miniatures, or at least I can't remember that at the very least. Now, Tunneler kind of worked like Fly, because, well, flying and all that, but that's how it worked on the tabletop, where it could move really, really quickly across the table like if it was flying. So essentially, in the best way to translate it, this is a creature that could tunnel. This is a burrowing creature. We currently don't have that function in Total War Warhammer, but we have seen modders kind of interpret that with, say, for example, the Burrowing Behemoth when it comes to the Skaven Clan Molder mods, where it can teleport. And maybe that's something that could be done for this creature too. That is, of course, if we see it implemented in Total War Warhammer 3, but if a Khuresh DLC comes and with this little lore tidbit that we've been able to discuss, it looks like it could be a possibility. And this is something that I'd like to see. The model itself is absolutely impressive. I'd love to see something like this animated, because if we get creatures like this, then there's a few other burrowing monsters that we should be able to get afterwards. This, however, is the first time that we've seen any Khureshi lore in a long time, and it's rather curious. I hope there's more expansions to this in the future. I'll be reading over the book itself. I've just purchased it and picked it up. Well, the digital version, because of the delays, the physical version isn't available until Q4 of this year, so that's going to be quite some time now. Either way, this is exciting, and it makes me think about a possible Khuresh faction in the future. But what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and let's start a bit of a discussion. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below are various links to different social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and Discord. Also in the description section is an affiliate link with Element Games where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Making a purchase using that link and also our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. It's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A big thank you to Gibraltar LUSC, Ryan Bertsche, Andrew Prince, and Okro for subscribing to us at our Fane level. You guys are super cool. And a big thank you to Edward Yule, VS Vasan, Aaron Whitman, and Shaggy for subscribing to us at our King level. Honestly, we can't thank you all enough. And lastly, a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing, and commenting on these videos. Honestly, it's because of you guys that the channel's been growing at such a great pace lately, so we can't thank you all enough. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very soon. Have a good day.